Hello and good morning, Myo friend. It is August, believe it or not, or ready or not. It's August, it's National Breastfeeding Month. And so this conversation that we're about to have, or this soapbox education that we're about to have, could not come at a better time. I actually attempted to do this video yesterday, and because I was still a little bit sassy and cranky over this topic, I decided that I would do it today with a little bit less attitude, if there is such thing. So before we get into that, if you're new to me, let me just introduce myself. My name's Carmen. I am a myofunctional therapist. I have a large online global practice. My practice specializes in things like, I say whole health wellness and education. So I really work with my clients to level up, to get to that optimum wellness. And a lot of people don't really connect myofunctional therapy and wellness, but they really, really should. So my practice specializes in helping clients with digestion, with nutrition, with sleep promotion, with sleep disordered breathing. A lot of my clients have snoring, sleep apnea concerns, digestive issues. We've got eustachian tube dysfunction. I work with a lot of clients who have temporomandibular, so jaw disorders. What else? Just really taking people from feeling like a bag of dog poop to feeling like $1 million. And I don't take it lightly when I make that comment, because it truly is life-changing for everybody. So the reason that I wanted to have this conversation, and it just so happens to coincide that it's breastfeeding month, is because I really feel like I fell down on the job recently. In talking about what kind of practice I have, I work with clients generally about ages 4 or 5 and up. So I don't work with infants, so that and breastfeeding just really doesn't come onto my radar a lot. I field a lot of questions and concerns from parents, and it's generally like, hey, sorry, I don't work with infants. I can't be a source of help for you. So this whole situation that we're going to talk about has really opened my eyes that I need to bring on an associate who's going to handle all of that kind of stuff for my practice, helping people with infants and concerns and through that kind of process. So that obviously is not going to happen today, or probably not even this month, but it's definitely coming. So here's where I fell down on the job. So many of you guys know that I was back home in Montana recently, and I went there for family vacation. While I was there, my sister's son, so my nephew, had a baby that was due any moment. And where I feel like I fell down on the job is that I never had a conversation about, hey, you know that there's a possibility that you could have a baby and there would be a tongue tie. Just didn't think about it. I'm generally an educator when somebody wants or seeks out information, but I'm not out there just, cramming this information down people's throats. So I guess that's why I didn't think about it. So fast forward to last Friday when I was home. So now she's born, she's 2 weeks old, and my sister and I were just kind of chatting, and then she says, hey, we found out that baby has a tongue tie. Do you have any nuggets of wisdom? And the wheels came off the bus, you guys. In no time, I had my earbuds in, and we had the mom and dad on speakerphone, because I was just spilling out all the things, pretty much acting like the house was on fire. So come to find out, they knew for a week that baby had a tongue tie. But here we were having this conversation a week later because nobody had guided them. Okay, so that's why I'm here to talk with you about this. So let me just give you a little bit of backstory. Generally in the tongue tie world, especially with babies, most of them go overlooked, and that has reportedly been told because a lot of pediatricians think it's hogwash. They don't think it's a concern. 99% of them, last I heard, don't even believe. They don't screen for them. I have been told directly by breastfeeding professionals that sometimes, depending on where you work, you're not allowed to see a tongue tie. You're not allowed to talk about it. you're not allowed to do anything. Like, you're just kind of gagged on it. And so on that note, the kiddos, mom and dad, they had 3 people tell them that there was a tongue tie. Pediatrician, lactation, and I think a physical therapist, somebody else. So anyhow, I just remembered that 3 professionals told them. So that tells me, as soon as I heard that, I thought, okay, well, that just tells me that this must be a significant tie, because 3 people noticed it. The thing is, though, you guys, here's problem number 1, is that they told her, we're going to watch it for a couple weeks. Watch it what? Watch it affect mom's breastfeeding relationship. You know, a new baby and a new breastfeeding mom, they're struggling to develop that breastfeeding relationship anyhow. And when you put a barrier in the way, like a kiddo who can't latch or a kiddo who can't effectively transfer milk, mom's milk supply is going to be affected as well. And so for 2 weeks, like a very important time for this to be happening, we're just going to watch it. So that was really the first complaint. Okay. My first thought. The other thing is that they saw a significant enough tongue tie that they did not even let mom try to breastfeed naturally. They moved her right to a nipple shield. So I think that that's awful that they see an issue that's going to cause a problem. So they just move her right to something that, and I see why they did it. They're trying to get it so that she can breastfeed, but it still isn't addressing the issue, you guys. So that was the other thing that I had a problem with. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation here with you guys today, because there is somebody today who is struggling with a baby trying to nurse, who doesn't know what to do. Maybe they've been told that they're fine or there's no tongue tie. I have worked with thousands of clients, you guys, and so many of them as adults were told, you know, or the mom tells them, you know, hey, when you were a baby, I had you checked for a tongue tie and they said you were fine. And that's not the case, because some of the worst tongue ties that I have seen around the world in adults obviously gives me a clue to what it was like when they were a baby. Okay. So I had some notes here. My computer just went to sleep. So let me open this back up. So let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to talk about. Okay. So absolutely. Now I want to just get right into a couple of the things that my great niece was going through. First of all, gassy, spit up, unhappy. They were having to feed her almost vertically. Okay. They were propping her up in her crib. This is a huge red sign. And then I think that really was the bit, like, these are young kids. They just didn't know. So I think the first thing that I want to talk about is that, do you need to release it? Yeah, because that was the first question that mom and dad asked when I told them, this is like, you guys have known about this for a week. She should have already had a release done. Thank God they're in Montana, where I have an excellent provider who got them in like that. But their first question was, do we need to do something about it? And so I took a couple notes here. Yes, the answer is yes. There are long-term consequences of ignoring a tongue tie in your kiddo. If you're an adult and you have a tongue tie and you think you're fine because you've made it to whatever age you are, good for you, boo. But I will tell you this, there are long-term consequences. And I can testify to that because my large portion of clients that are 60 to 80, that are choking, that are having trouble with swallowing and they just can't figure it out, they wish that they had done something about it. So it definitely gets worse over time. The body stops compensating. So when we have an infant that has a tongue tie, it's going to affect the facial development. It can lead to crowding and ultimately the airway development. The most important bones of the face are the maxilla here and the mandible. And the tongue tie, if the tongue is held down and the kiddo can never learn to have the tongue in the roof of the mouth, it's not going to be able to spread this maxilla out. That affects how the stadium develops. So that affects how the bones of the face develop. If the bones of the face aren't allowed to get big enough, all the teeth cannot come in straight. It has very little to do with how daddy's side of the family has bad teeth or mom does or whatever. It has a lot to do with the habits and the tongue posture and that kind of stuff. So if the tongue is up, it gets to help be the scaffolding to open that palate up so it can be nice and wide, not tall and narrow. And ultimately, if these bones don't grow forward enough, then the airway is definitely compromised in a lot of cases. So we see that, when I look at a client and I look at nose, lip, chin, if their face is going backwards and they have this little retrognathic mandible that's underdeveloped, then we know that the airway is probably not big enough. So when the maxilla grows big enough, the mandible will follow it, so kind of like a lid on the box, and then it brings the tissues of the airway, the tongue, the tonsils, all of that stuff forward, giving more volume. So when we ignore tongue ties in children, in infants, we are choosing poor facial development. There's just really no way around it. I know it's a pretty strong statement, but I haven't seen somebody who has a tongue tie whose face develops normally. Just doesn't happen. The next thing we see is it affects their breathing. It affects mouth breathing, sinus issues. Going back to that development of the face. So if the tongue is down, it's tied to the floor of the mouth, therefore it's not in the roof of the mouth spreading that maxilla out, we end up with high narrow faces or palates, okay, or long narrow faces. You can look at my facial structure. My arch is narrow. I didn't have a tongue tie, but I was a mouth breather and my tongue was low, so it did the same damage. But when somebody has this high bubble palate, this high narrow palate, that the roof of the mouth is the floor of the nasal cavity. And so when you have a big ass speed bump in there, it's going to cause problems. It's going to cause problems in the sinuses. It's going to cause problems with the septum. If you think about the septum being here, if I use the example of a poster board and you have a piece of poster board and you push up on it, it's going to buckle one way or the other. So you absolutely can't have this portion of your face develop correctly when you've got these things out of the ordinary, if you will, okay? So when the maxilla spreads out, it brings that ceiling down, so the floor of the nose gets to be the floor of the nose, not a speed bump. So so we see concerns there. Another thing, if you're choosing not to release a kiddo, is the posture issues. There can be speech issues. My computer went to sleep again, so hold on. There can be those issues and other issues, but those are most common, and those are the biggest things where I say, hey, your kiddo has a tongue tie. We need to look at that. We need to look at the long-term consequences. So the last thing that I want to talk about is if you suspect that your kiddo has a tie, because like I said, somebody needs to hear this today. Somebody is suffering today with their breastfeeding, or they're really frustrated. So my great niece had a release on Monday. Here's the crazy thing, you guys. Immediately, I can't say immediately. Immediately breastfeeding did not get better because she was mad and she still was a little bit numb, from the procedure. But mom reported that she was already working better with a bottle, getting her mouth wrapped around there. She wasn't being so loud and clicky. And so she was starting to be able to latch on the bottle. Then yesterday afternoon, things were getting better. The stretches were getting easier. It's no easy feat. Mom is having to do stretches every 3 hours around the clock. Which is hard when mom's already exhausted and new to this, first baby. But she immediately stuck her tongue out. and so she was 2 weeks old, and mom and dad had never seen her stick her tongue out. So I think that's pretty significant when they're like, oh, that tongue was being held back in there and now it's popping out. So if you suspect that there's concerns, you guys, my biggest thing is ask questions, fight for your kiddo. Of the thousands of clients that I have had this conversation with, so many of them, if they were dealing with it with their kiddo, they really had to get mad. Like Mama Bear has to get mad. I know we are inclined to trust our providers, and as we should be able to do that. But the problem is if they're antiquated in their thinking, if they're following the, old model, maybe they don't know. Maybe they're not tongue tie savvy, or they just haven't gotten up to speed. Also seeking out, lactation support that is going to listen to you, that's going to look. Many of my clients have been poo-pooed by their lactation, which is crazy because the lactation consultant is there to help support you through this process. So anything that's going to help, because like in the case of Mama with my great niece, all of this is going on, and meanwhile, mom's having to pump to keep the milk supply going so that she can salvage this breastfeeding relationship after having the release done. So that's super important. Now, so you need to find somebody. Generally, it's better if you find a tongue tie savvy lactation support person. Generally, if they know and understand tongue ties, they're going to have somewhere to send you if there's a release. Mine, like I said, it was my provider in Montana, got her right in, and it was wonderful. Now, so to learn more, I'm going to make sure that if you look in my profile, or if you look anywhere in my social media, depending on where you're watching this video, I have a parent workshop that I taught for a international parent organization, and a workbook that comes with it. It's called Root Cause Resolution. I encourage parents to go through this stuff, because even if you don't just have an infant who's having trouble right now, you might see things with your kiddo. If you use that private eye list and you start examining your kid, like, ooh, that's important too. I also encourage you to look at my social media for any content that talks about age-appropriate tongue ties. This is also another tricky thing. I can't get into that here today. But if you don't deal with the tongue tie as an infant, then it's important that you wait till a kiddo is old enough to cooperate, comply, and comprehend therapy, which is what I do. So that's where the myofunctional therapy part comes in. With infants, you don't do traditional myofunctional therapy. So it's really important to do it when they're young, or wait till they're old enough for it to be what I call an age-appropriate tie. Maturity level has to be there. If not, you're going to end up just as bad as you were before, because the success does not just come from releasing that tissue. It comes from rehabilitating the dysfunction, learning how the muscles work correctly. Just because somebody gets a new knee and they don't do any physical therapy surrounding it doesn't just make them ready to run the Boston Marathon, okay? So that's important to think about. So even if you're a parent watching this and you've got an older kiddo, a 2-year-old should not go get a release. Definitely should not, because we risk creating a traumatic event, an oral aversion. It's just going to heal down the way it was. There's going to be more scar tissue, that kind of stuff. And that's generally my stance on most cases. The only time I have been willing to work earlier with the child than 4 or 5 are those kiddos who just aren't speaking, or they're having a significant delay in speech just based on the tongue tie. And those are outlying. So search my social media. I will tell you this, guys. So I get a lot of questions, and I've had to get a lot better about setting those boundaries. I can't comment or give somebody advice who's not a paying client of mine, because those paying clients have done their due diligence. They've filled out their pages and pages of paperwork. We've dug through and unpacked all the things. I know stuff about those people, so I can make an educated decision. And in my practice, I am not willing to make myself look like an idiot by commenting on something when I don't know. So unfortunately, DMing me or sending emails, that kind of stuff, asking questions regardless or regarding your child, those aren't getting to me. And that's just because my team helps screen those out. If they're specific and they're not about a client, if I don't know any information about somebody. So that's why I work really hard to educate, do stuff like this, create resources for you. For anybody, age 4 and over, you are certainly welcome to get on my schedule, schedule an exam. I'm happy to do second opinions, have conversations, all of that stuff, but that will require you to do the paperwork so that I can know and understand the case. You're going to send pictures, videos, all of that stuff. So I won't comment on cases that I don't know. So please understand that I'm not ignoring them. I don't see them because my team, screens those out. You can ask questions when I post questions on social media. I do that periodically so that I have stuff to talk about in these videos. You can also email me, thetonguetrainer@gmail. Those questions get compiled and then I will do Q&A. I won't directly ask them or answer them to you, but I will do them on a video here so that I can educate other people. Again, if they're specific about a case, not going to make it to me. So the best place to start, like I said, tongue tie savvy lactation. Maybe you do have a tongue tie provider in your area, which would be fab. And then just get started. Do not be afraid to rock the boat. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If something is not right, it's not right, okay? Your nipples shouldn't look like lipsticks. It shouldn't hurt. You shouldn't be cracked and bleeding, all of those things. And for crying out loud, you don't watch your way out of a tongue tie. That's the important thing. When somebody tells you that they're just going to watch it, that's a big concern because it's affecting things for baby in more areas than just the tongue. And then last, make sure to look for the resources. So on my website, there's a resource page. Anywhere that you follow me or see this content, you will absolutely be able to find access to downloading that root cause resolution workbook. So I think you download the workbook and then it gives you the link to the masterclass that I did for parents. And that's definitely over an hour. I can't remember if it was 2 hours or not, but tons of information. Even on YouTube, you can find a lot of videos for parents. So that's it, you guys. I'm going to wrap it up. I managed to get through that without being too terribly sassy. It saddens me that I didn't have a conversation with my nephew because they could have had a release, right away if they knew that this was a possibility. So that won't happen again. So anyhow, you can watch for more information this month to celebrate National Breastfeeding Month. I'll be doing some more work here on specific things with infants, that kind of stuff. So I will see you guys back then. Bye for now.